Dosm Rider Review.
Hey YouTube, Dosm Rider here, and welcome to the first episode of Dosm's Rambles. So I've talked about doing these little vlogs in my vlogs for a little bit. They're just sort of like ramble reviews of, I was going to do the quotations and then I didn't commit to it, so it was just peace. Of like Sentai series or any other series I've been watching, depending on how long I do this or whenever. So this video probably the only one with an explanation at the beginning. So over the course of the last few months, I've been watching some Sentais I hadn't seen before as part of the book club with Shuken Shinobi and Aerosol. And we have watched, in this order, we watched, well, Shuki and I watched Jetman. Aerosol already seen it. We watched Gaoranger, and then Gaoranger, and then most recently Gaoranger. We might be doing Mask Man next. I don't know. It's up in the air. They need to hurry up and do like Gaoranger and stuff. Anyhow, excuse me. So I'm going to go backwards in the way we did them and do these little ramble reviews for them because Gaoranger's fresher in my mind and I just decided to go backwards because of that. So anyhow, it's not really going to be that structured. If you follow me in any form, you know that I can be pretty random. I mean, I'm a part of the podcast Writers, Rangers, and Rambles. So it's basically just going to be a lot of all over the place thoughts. It's going to be loosely structured into plot and characters. But yeah, so it's just going to kind of be random. So if you know my style, then you'll know exactly what to expect. If you are just popping in on this video, just so you know, as Brian says at the beginning of his little reviews, my opinions tend to be very different from the majority of the fandom. The majority of the fandom is like, oh my god, Sentai is the greatest drama ever, it's not a kid show. The majority of the fandom is stupid. But anyway, so my opinions tend to be kind of different from a lot of the main Toku fandom. And also, there will be spoilers. Spoilers, they win. Show's over. You can leave now. You know the Gaorangers win. That's actually a spoiler for every Sentai and Power Ranger series ever. You can go ahead and write that down now. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Just to get out of the way, in terms of like suits and designs and whatnot, I always have like the Gaoranger Wild Force suits. They're pretty neat looking, and I really always liked the Power Animals. I just like the concept of the way they work with like the interchanging and whatnot, and just their designs in general. So I'm not going to go too much into that. I just generally like the aesthetic. So story-wise, going into Gaoranger, I had already seen Wild Force a couple times, so a lot of it is Japanese Wild Force. You can really tell that they wanted to, that they were starting more to copy near the end there for the Saban era, and now we're straight into copying. But a lot of the plots, specifically on like filler episodes, were like practically scene for scene. A lot of the same character type backgrounds and whatnot. So it's very, very similar. But I do have to say, they did quite a few little different things in Wild Force that I appreciate. So one of the things that I find that's a difference for me when I watch Sentai is that I actually gain an appreciation for what PR did a lot of the time. A lot of people, like I said when I was making fun of them earlier, they'll watch Sentai and then like disown PR and say that Sentai is this serious drama and PR can't even compare because it's a children's show. I've seen sillier stuff in Sentai than I've seen in PR. It's far from, it's definitely a children's show. But anyway, more recently, in this batch of Sentai and then the last time I kind of batch watched a bunch of shows, I found that I have a lot more respect for things PR did, and I think this was the case here too. Even though Gaoranger and Wild Force are really, really similar, there were some different things done. The main plot remains the same. You have these warriors chosen by the power animals to fight the orgs. The battle's been going on for a long time. There used to be ancient warriors. These are the modern day ones. You got very similar characters. But they did some things different. Like, you still have the same setup you had Seisei and Yabaiba, which are Jindax and Toxica. And they are always working for one of the three generals that comes through. Now, I apologize, I can't remember their names, mainly because I don't care. But it was like the nose, the eyes, and the mouth, which were the representations. And they were used in varying degrees throughout Wild Force. I think two of them were used as just kind of Duke Org generals, and then like one of them was used to temporarily replace Master Org. But anyway, they were kind of like the main bad guy. It was like, you would have one guy leading them at the beginning, which was the dude with the eye. And then once he died, they would be replaced by the middle guy, which was the dude that had the multiple mouths, I think. Was he? No, the middle one was the guy with the nose that did all the Zenaku stuff. So anyway, so it kind of acted like that, and there was no real Master Org. There was like, they thought that there was, but in the end there really wasn't a Master Org, and it was just always these three generals. So that's something we did different here. There legitimately was a Master Org in Wild Force, and then he died, obviously, and then we had that whole thing with it being the guy that worked with Cole's parents and him becoming Master Org. So that whole storyline was original, and I really liked that a lot better. But overall, for Gaoranger, let's go back to Gaoranger, the story is okay. It's pretty good. I did always like the premise for Wild Force. I liked the setup and all of the ideas behind it. But I was a little bit bored watching this, partly because I had seen so much of it before, and partly because I just kind of found Wild Force more interesting. They had a little bit more things to keep me interested. I'm fairly confident if I hadn't seen Wild Force before, I would have enjoyed this a little bit more. But like overall, in terms of the story, which will probably be my final verdict in general, it was just kind of okay. I'm going to do a lot of comparisons to Wild Force here. So, like I said, they handled the Master Org thing very differently, and I actually liked that a lot better. And then, of course, they had the mystery with Cole's dad, which was tied into Master Org. So that whole thing, I thought, was a really nice original storyline here we had in the US, and it kept me way more intrigued to continue watching Wild Force than it did Gaoranger. The other major storyline for Gaoranger and Wild Force is Loki or Zanaku, which is, the introduction of Gao Silver, because he was trapped as Loki or Zanaku. And that is one of the highlights of both series. And I did enjoy that arc in Gaoranger, but again, I kind of liked it better in Wild Force. First of all, I think Zanaku is just a cooler name than Loki. But I just generally liked the way the Wild Force one was handled in terms of just how everyone behaved, how Zanaku was treated, how, especially near the end, because he kind of wandered off and Zanaku followed him. And in this one, there really wasn't much of that. I just kind of liked the overall atmosphere of it, even though it was very similar. Another original thing that went on in terms of Wild Force was, their equivalent of Princess Shayla was not as annoying. But she was like the descendant of the princess that Gao Silver had known. So there's quite a few little different things in there, which it's like upon further reflection I know that they actually did some pretty original stuff. I'm mainly more talking about Wild Force. Mainly because the point is, it was like circling back to what I was saying at the beginning, is that it was an okay show. It was good, it had some really good ideas. I was just a little bit bored, and in terms of comparing the two, I liked some things Wild Force did better. Like comparing me watching the show side by side, like I said, I was more intrigued by Wild Force. I kind of liked the things they did more with Master Org and with Zanaku compared to Gaoranger, which I was just kind of bored or indifferent to. But overall, the setup and everything was okay. It's still a pretty solid story, and they had quite a bit of story going on, kind of rolling one right into the next, which was nice. And there was a lot of dramatic things. I didn't get terribly attached to it. The ending was fairly solid, very similar to Wild Force. One thing I noticed is that the finale of Gaoranger, they do like their roll call where they say their names, which they did in Wild Force, and I always thought this kind of strange. In Wild Force, I mean. And I guess the reason is because in Gaoranger, that was sort of the first time they introduced themselves. I mean, you learn some of their names, but for the majority of the series, they go by, red, blue, white, yellow, black. They go by the code names. So, I don't know. That was just a slight note. So I'm going to kind of segue into characters here. The characters all were just very for me. Again, I don't... this is practically a Wild Force review, but I kind of prefer the Wild Force counterparts. Let's start with Red. In terms of Red, I do prefer Galred, or Kakeru, I believe his name was. I prefer him overall just because I really didn't like Cole. I found him to be annoying. I thought his storyline was good. The character was annoying with all his preaching. But the difference here being, the other 4 or 5 Rangers are actually fairly similar to their counterparts, sans gender for yellow. But Cole and Kakeru are kind of different. Because Cole's kind of like, this stupid jungle boy who's like, oh, spirits of the earth. And Kakeru is actually a veterinarian who every single time it displayed on the subtitles I read as vegetarian. So it made no sense where he's like, I can't let you do that. I'm a vegetarian. I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? You need some more protein. That's all we know. Anyway, I did prefer Kakeru overall. I didn't really like him very much, but I preferred him to Cole. He certainly wasn't the smartest person. Specifically, there was an episode where he was tricked by Christmas Org, where he came off as very stupid. So yeah, I didn't really care for Kakeru that much, but I did like him better than Cole. And he was essentially, in some ways, a little smarter, being a vet and not stupid. But as for the others, they're fairly similar. I'm going to talk about Blue and Black as a set, because they both were basically kind of the same deal. They were just kind of these friends that always had the never give up slogan. They're both very similar, but again, I kind of prefer Max and Danny. I just kind of found them to be a little more likable. I really can't find terribly much to say about them in general. Yellow, obviously the difference being gender, because in Japan, Gao Yellow was a guy, and we made it a girl here. Just a random rant about that. I don't know why they did that. I mean, I'm sure they're like, oh, we need to get female role models, but it seems stupid now, because Bandai only makes, like, all the different kinds of toys for the guys. So you think when they're, like, meeting with Saban, they would probably just want to make Yellow a guy, because there's a whole other guy to market, especially when you have stuff like Lost Galaxy, where Maya was like, phew. So, I don't know. I don't think they should have ever done that. But anyhow, fairly similar backgrounds. They're both kind of like the hard ass of the group. Although I feel like Taylor was a little harder on Cole for a lot longer, did she say, than Yellow was on Red and Gaoranger. And I just kind of generally enjoyed Taylor more. I thought she's more of an interesting character. I feel like she got some more moments in there. Gao Yellow was just kind of there. He kind of spewed out some bad English times. Let's see, who else we got? Oh, White. I was okay with White. Like, a lot of these are just going to be the same. They were just kind of okay for me. I kind of preferred Alyssa. Again, I thought she got some more interesting moments. I thought they actually kind of improved on a lot of these characters by, I feel like, giving them a little bit more distinct personalities, or at least presenting it better so I remembered it more, and just giving them their own stories. But they're very similar. Both of them had a sort of similar background. They had that same story where the dad came back, except instead of, like in Wild Force, Alyssa was, I think she wanted to study. She was going to college. The White's was just that she wanted to be on her own, but she was still studying martial arts. And then you got, like, Gal Silver, who I think they're kind of both even for me. There's always something a little bit that bugged me about, what's his name, Lunar Wolf, Merrick. There's something about him. Sometimes he was a little bit weird. But overall, I feel like they're a little bit even. I do like something in Gaoranger that they did better, which was the whole stay away from the team thing, because at the very beginning, Gal Silver and the Lunar Wolf Rangers stayed away from the team because they were all brooding about being Zanaku. And that didn't go on quite as long in Gaoranger. He would always ride in on his own. Like, he didn't stay with the other Rangers. He was still off on his own, and he would ride in later. But he didn't whine as long as Merrick did, which was nice. They kind of resolved it not too long into his appearance. So that was nice. They just kind of resolved the whole, I'm actually going to work with the team now. And he still rode in separately, which is, I guess, why they kept him more like that with Merrick. But I like that they resolved that quicker. He just didn't come off as whiny. So I did like that. But like I said, I do like the way they handled Zanaku better. As mentioned earlier, Setsei and Yubaiba became Jindax and Toxica, and yet again, I preferred Wild Force. I found Setsei and Yubaiba to be very annoying. I really didn't like them at all. They kind of got the Akumaru method of death. They got crushed by rocks. So, I just really didn't like them. They kind of had that whole friendship dynamic that Jindax and Toxica did, except I didn't really like them at all. I was glad that they were gone. And Jindax and Toxic kind of just went off to go have adventures, so I kind of preferred them. And the three generals were just very generic, just kind of evil. They sort of had distinct plans in various ways, but it wasn't memorable enough. As I said, I did prefer Wild Force's method of how they used Master Org and tied that all in. It was just a lot more interesting. Princess Shayla, and I'm so sorry, I talked about how this is fresher in my mind, but I can't remember their Princess Shayla's name, but I did like her better. Princess Shayla was, like, overly sweet and annoying. So I did prefer Gaorangers. And they had the Soul Bird was like this adorable little stuffed bird, which was cool. I thought there was someone else. Am I forgetting anybody else? I don't think, oh god, Kite. Kite, who, I call him Balloon in Gaoranger because it was more around a balloon. That is so annoying. I hate both of them so much. They're so annoying. It's so crappy because Gao God has such a cool looking design, and he's always represented by a stupid little kid that I would love nothing more than to punch. It was so stupid. But that was actually handled very similar, yet again. But yeah, this has been a pretty random, just kind of rant here. So I'm going to kind of wrap it up now, even though I feel like I went quicker than I thought it was going to. But I really don't have that much more to say. Overall, Gaoranger was okay for me. I didn't really hate it, but I didn't really enjoy it that much either. It was just kind of there for me to watch. Some episodes grabbed me more than others. It was certainly better than Gaoranger. We'll get to that later. But, yeah, it was just kind of okay. I wasn't angry when I finished it. I didn't have too many major complaints. It was just kind of there. If you haven't watched Gaoranger or Wild Force, I kind of want you to watch Gaoranger first, just because I'm curious to see how that comes off if you watch it first. Because, like I said, when I was watching it, the whole time I kept thinking, I might really like this if I had never seen Wild Force before, because a lot of it's similar. I'd say it was like 85% the same. So yeah, I certainly recommend checking it out. It's not a terrible Sentai. There's certainly terrible Sentais, Gaoranger. So yeah, it wasn't bad. They had a good story, good concepts, some really decent arcs. So yeah, it was overall just okay, but it was a decent Sentai. I can recommend checking it out to see how you like it, but for me it was just okay. But if you haven't watched Wild Force, and you're gonna watch Gaoranger, or if you've only watched Gaoranger and haven't watched Wild Force, let me know what you thought of it. Just 'cause I'm curious, because I can't really get the Wild Force out of my mind, so... I mean, not like I think about it all the time, but it's like when I was watching it, it was kind of, colored with that shade. Anyhow, so yeah, that was the first video. Kind of boring. It went a lot shorter than I thought it was, so I apologize. I hope they get better later. Next up, I'm not sure when it will go up, but it will be Gaoranger. And then followed by Gaoranger and Jetman, and then I'm not sure what's after that. But they're just going to kind of be random rants, just kind of giving my overall thoughts. Yeah, that's about it. I'm sorry I don't have more. I thought there was going to be more jokes. Next time I'm going to bring the jokes. I'm going to hire like a prop guy to like hold up jokes. No, I'm just kidding. I'll make my own jokes. Now I'm just talking about jokes. So I think I'm going to go.